turkeys, raccoons. There's a lot of wildlife in our neighborhood.
He especially liked the deer. He built a custom feeder, and that's where he kept the corn.
Until his disgruntled neighbor decided to put an end to his hobby.
I come home, there's dead growing.
And when it's one dead animal, it's easy to think it's a coincidence, but it didn't stop there.
And when their feud ends in bloodshed, investigators must determine who's to blame.
It wasn't something that was happening over the course of a couple months. These guys had been at it for years.
It's the Hatfields versus the McCoys, and it was just one of those perfect storms.
May 5th, 2014. It's a quiet Monday evening in the picturesque town of New Brighton, Minnesota. Sean Bortel and his wife are tucking their children into bed. But at 8:32 p.m., their domestic routine is shattered by the sounds of gunfire.
It was boom, 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 boom. And I froze. And it's not uncommon to hear fireworks or things like that in the neighborhood. And my wife immediately said, "Those are gunshots, call the police."
911, where's your emergency?
I think somebody just fired a gun near our house, like 4 shots.
While the operator takes the Bortels' information, a much more urgent call comes in.
911, where's your emergency?
They're shooting us, hurry!
What, needs an ambulance?
I've been shot, yes!
On the phone is 48-year-old Jennifer Clevin. She says she and her boyfriend, 46-year-old Todd Stevens, were outside their house when a gunman opened fire.
She ran inside, injured and bleeding, and she picked up the phone, called 911.
Can you tell me if the man that did this is still there?
He's shooting through my house! I'm scared to go near the window!
Okay, Jennifer, we have a lot of help on the way, okay?
We get here now!
Her longtime partner had been shot. She didn't know if he was still alive. I can only imagine how frightened and upset she was.
Police and paramedics quickly arrive to find Todd Stevens lying on the ground, unresponsive.
They have to get in there and keep themselves safe, assess the situation, determine if there's an active shooter. Even if the shooting itself is over, who did it? Where did it come from?
Todd Stevens was a longtime resident of New Brighton. In fact, he was raised on the same block where he and Jennifer now lived.
The neighborhood is pretty small. Everyone's very close. There's older families, younger families with kids. Like I have people who have lived there their whole lives.
Todd and I had talked quite a bit about his history in the neighborhood. He grew up in the house that we had purchased. He had moved into the house that he had while his parents lived next door to him for some time.
The couple had first met 18 years before in 1996.
Jennifer was a single mom with a young son. She just moved from Texas to Minnesota, and Todd was a short-haul truck driver. They hit it off pretty quickly. Todd was good with Jennifer's son, Ryan, so when the relationship grew more serious, they moved in to Todd's house. They hadn't gotten married yet, but they weren't any less of a family. Jennifer described their life together as wonderful.
Todd was an avid outdoorsman and often took Jennifer and Ryan camping, but they didn't have to go very far to enjoy the wilderness.
New Brighton is a wooded area near several lakes and preserves.
We have Rice Creek right across the street from my home. There's deer all the time, turkeys, raccoons. It's just, there's a lot of wildlife in our neighborhood, and that's part of what makes the neighborhood great.
Todd liked having all the animals around, but he especially liked the deer. He built a custom deer feeder where he kept it full of corn.
I definitely saw more deer, partly because they used our yard to walk to get to the corn. My kids thought it was cool.
In addition to his deer feeder, Todd was also well known for his outgoing personality.
He was incredibly friendly. He loved his beer. He actually seemed more friendly after having a number of beers, but Not once had I seen Todd irate.
According to most people, Todd and Jennifer appeared to be ordinary neighbors.
Todd was incredibly helpful. One of my daughters had a flat tire. He helped out with that. We had a swing set. Todd came over and brought tools and helped out with that. So in general, it was a typically positive neighborly relationship.
But now Todd is bleeding to death after being gunned down outside his home.
When first responders got there, some helped Jennifer while others went to Todd to administer CPR. The whole time, they don't know if they have an active shooter situation, and it is very tense.
While officers try to secure the area, another call comes in.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone's shot.
What's your name?
You'll find out.
Coming up, Minnesota police find themselves in a standoff with the gunman.
It's quite surprising for the shooter to call 911.
In New Brighton, Minnesota, police and paramedics have descended upon the home of Todd Stevens and Jennifer Clevin, both victims of an unexplained shooting.
My wife and I heard Jennifer scream. We were really afraid. We didn't know if there were people loose in the neighborhood. Who were these people? Who did the shooting?
While first responders try to administer first aid, 911 operators are fielding another call about the attack.
All right, do you
So the
think you shot him?
police are there. I'm not going to shoot the police or anything.
I'm sorry, what?
I said I'm not going to shoot the police. The police are already here. They can go help the guy.
Even though the caller won't tell them who he is, it's pretty clear through the context that they are talking to the gunman. So they try to keep him on the line and try to keep him talking.
Who is the guy that's outside?
Todd Stevens. Nobody listens to me around here. I told the guys that he's going to shoot us. He's got guns. And I just had enough.
Okay. Are you planning on doing something to yourself?
No.
Are you willing to let the police come in?
Not the New Brighton police.
He wasn't going to surrender to the New Brighton police because he thought they were a bunch of, quote, kooks.
Neil said he already spoke to police earlier that day and told them about the threats that Todd made against him, but they ignored him.
Todd was telling the neighbors that he was going to shoot you?
He was going to shoot me, yeah.
Can I ask what your name is?
Neil Zumberg.
57-year-old Neil Zumberg lives across the street from Todd and Jennifer, and he's currently holed up in his house with a gun.
It wasn't just a random attack in a random neighborhood. There was one suspect with a gun who had a target.
For the next half hour, you have a 911 dispatcher on the phone with him, and outside, you have a police commander trying to talk him down. By the end of it, you had law enforcement from multiple jurisdictions outside of his home ready for anything.
Where is the gun that's in the house right now? I just want to make sure officers know so that it doesn't endanger you.
Well, you don't care about me.
I care. We don't want anything to happen to you.
But you don't care about me. I know you don't.
But just as officers are preparing to storm the house, there's a breakthrough.
A dispatcher coordinates with the Ramsey County Sheriff's Department and somehow gets Neil to agree to give himself up then to sheriff's deputies instead of the local police.
In the end, he just stepped out of his house with his hands up and went outside quietly.
While Neil is taken in for questioning, investigators begin to process the crime scene.
From Todd and Jennifer's wounds and the damage to the house, it looked like a shotgun was used in the attack.
The house was struck several times by pellets. They also entered the residence and were lodged in the living room of the house. The front door, the screen door, the glass was shattered.
Outside the corner of the house, they found 4 spent shotgun shells.
They mark all the shells and they have to take all their photographs. The shooter was 125 feet away. across the street.
A search of Neil's house turns up 3 possible weapons.
Neil Zumberg had 3 long guns. Those were from his father. One was a shotgun, one was a deer rifle. I think there might have been another shotgun as well.
One of the shotguns, a Browning 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun, was found in the Zumberg's basement on a chair. Neil's fingerprints were found on the gun and the shells were a match.
But what caused the bad blood between these 2 neighbors in the first place? As investigators speak to the other local residents, they begin to get a clearer picture.
It was just a normal day. I was outside in my backyard with my dogs. I knew right away that it was gunshots, and it was an odd sound for our neighborhood. So immediately I thought of Todd and Neil. It seemed like that's the direction where it was coming from.
This was not the first time that these 2 families had gotten into it with each other. His wife, Paula, also locked horns with Todd's girlfriend, Jennifer, as well.
In fact, Paula Zumberg had been spotted fleeing the area just after the shooting occurred.
My wife had looked outside to see Paula near the edge of her lawn, looking across the street at Todd's house, going to her car and then driving away.
It turned out that Paula and Jennifer were also overheard having a loud argument earlier that day, so police had to wonder if that also played a part.
As the police investigation begins to unfold, they're sort of discovering that there's this feud that's playing into what had happened. It wasn't something that just happened over the course of a week. It wasn't something that was happening over the course of a couple months. These guys had been at it for years.
What kind of feud could have led to this level of violence?